Welcome to your Mixtures Lab, separation of solids in a mixture, virtual style. Today's key question is, can one identify the difference between a mixture and a pure substance through investigating physical methods for separating them? We'll be using the background information from our notes to answer our background section. You should look in your notes to identify the definitions for the following vocabulary: an element, compound, heterogeneous mixture, homogeneous mixture, and the 4 ways in which mixtures can be separated. Take a moment to do this now. Welcome back. In review, an element is a pure substance composed of only one type of atom. A compound is a substance with 2 or more elements that are chemically joined. A heterogeneous mixture is a mixture that is not the same throughout. A homogeneous mixture is a mixture that is the same throughout. And the 4 ways in which we can separate a mixture is by heating, cooling, filtering, or sorting. Next, we'll move on to your pre-lab. So question number 1, which is going to be easier to separate, a compound or a mixture? Well, a compound is a pure substance, which cannot be separated by physical means. And a mixture, being a mixture, can be separated by physical means. So number 1 is a mixture. Now let's make sure we're prepared for the safety procedures that we need to follow in this lab. Number 2, true or false? Hot and cold glassware looks the same. This is true. We want to approach hot glassware with caution before we touch it. Number 3, true or false? Putting water on hot glass is a very easy way to break it. This is also true. We want to ensure that all of our glassware has had the opportunity to completely cool down to the touch before we clean it with water. Number 4, if we do need to touch hot glassware, what should we use to lift it off of a hot plate? We are going to be using hot hands, which are rubber mitts that look like this. These are made out of silicone, which is a great insulator and allows us to grab our hot glassware without burning ourselves. Next step is we're going to write down the materials that we will be gathering from the station up front and the materials that are needed at our own individual lab station. At our workstation up front, you will be able to find a balance with our heterogeneous mixture, which today is going to be sulfur and salt, which is also known as NaCl. You will also find weigh paper to weigh your mixture on the balance. At the lab station where you work, you will need to bring your lab sheet. You will find a hot plate. You will bring filter paper and a funnel, a test tube with a rubber top and scrubby, a 100 milliliter beaker, a scoopula, a graduated cylinder, and some hot hands. It's important to remember that every time you're working in a lab at your lab station, you must have safety goggles on. So, to begin our lab, we are going to be separating a mixture of sulfur and salt. You can see 2 pictures of these materials as they are individually separated. Sulfur is a yellow powder there on the left. Salt is a crystal that you see here on the right. In this jar is where you will find your mixture of both sulfur and salt mixed together. And here is that mixture a little bit more up close. So we'll be answering question number 2. Question number 2 asks us to identify which is the element and which is the compound. Make your choice for either sulfur or salt for an element or sulfur or salt for a compound. Next, we will be adding this sulfur and salt compound to a mixture by adding water. So we go to our lab station up front and we measure out 1.5 grams of the sulfur and salt mixture onto weigh paper. Next, we place that solution into a test tube and add 6 milliliters of water, H2O, to the solution. We place the black topper on the test tube and shake for 1 minute. Over here on the right, you can see a zoom-in picture of the result of your test tube. Question number 5 asks you to answer, which material can you see floating in the test tube, which would be that yellow substance that you see floating on the top. And question number 6 asks, which material has dissolved in the water, which is that crystal-like watery solution that you see in the bottom. Next, we're going to take our mixture from the test tube and we're going to filter it. So we're going to take one filter and place it in a funnel over a 100 milliliter beaker so that the middle of the filter is over the beaker. You can push your finger down into the paper so it fits into a funnel shape, approximately like you see here in the photo. Next, we're going to filter out the undissolved materials by pouring the contents through the filter paper into the beaker. So I've taken some photos of various steps of this filtration process. You can see in the photo on the left, right after I poured the solution into the filter paper, you start to see some clear liquid dripping through on the bottom. On the right, I've zoomed in to what is sticking to the filter paper, what is not traveling through the filter paper. So question number 9 is going to ask us which material did not go through the filter paper and which 2 materials did go through the filter paper. Here's a close-up of your final filtration. You see a clear liquid that is dripped out through the bottom of the filter paper and a yellow powder that has stayed on top of the filter paper. Next, it's important that we clean up as we go. So you'll take a moment to clean your test tube out in the sink and clean it with a brush if needed. Next, we're going to be heating our mixture on a hot plate. So we're going to turn the hot plate up to 10 and place the beaker with the solution on the hot plate to bring it to a boil. So you can notice that I put the beaker on the hot plate here on the left, and on the right, I'm beginning to boil as I see some of my water begin to evaporate. So I turned the hot plate off once my solution began to boil, and I left the beaker on the hot plate until the liquid completely boiled away, and finally, I used hot hands to remove the beaker and place it on the table. And this is what my final beaker looked like once the water boiled away. So question number 16, take a moment to describe what the beaker looks like once the water has boiled away. Finally, you have an opportunity to look at your final by scraping out your material in your beaker and placing it onto whey paper to view under a microscope. So a microscope is on the left. If you were to scrape out the materials in the beaker and place it under the microscope, it would look like the picture on the right. Take a moment to describe how this substance is different from the original substance that you started with. Finally, it's important to always clean up and dry and put away all your materials before you answer your final questions. Your finale in today's lab is to complete this final table. It is your job to identify all of the elements, compounds, and mixtures that were present in this lab in the table below. You started with a heterogeneous mixture of sulfur and salt, and through the means of physical separation, heating, cooling, and filtering, you were able to separate that mixture into 5 elements, 2 compounds, 2 heterogeneous mixtures, including the one you started with, and 1 homogeneous mixture. To complete your lab, finish answering the final table and identifying the accurate elements, compounds, and mixtures present in the lab. If you have any additional questions, please check in with your teacher, and good luck.